OCD. There we go. Light up the cross. Sorry. Jesus came to his hometown. He's left the place where he healed Jairus' daughter and the hemorrhaging woman, and he has returned to Nazareth. It's the place where he grew up and spent the better part of his first 30 years of life. He's come home. My grandfather was a career Army officer. One of the things that meant for my aunts and uncles growing up is that they moved every 1 to 3 years. Until they went to college, 3 years was the longest they had ever lived in one place. They lived all over Europe and the United States. One evening, my mom and I were chatting, and she was telling me about that life. Growing up, she wondered what it would be like to be from just one place and to be able to put down roots, to have the same friends year after year after year, to graduate high school with the kids she had known since elementary school. She wondered what it was like to live in the same town where your parents and your grandparents and maybe even your great-grandparents had lived. Sometimes she wanted to belong to and be claimed by a particular place that she knew and that knew her. The kind of place where you can tell the same old stories over and over, and everyone has already heard them, but no one minds hearing them again. She was talking about a hometown kind of place. She gave my brother and I that hometown place on the southeast side of Indy because she didn't have that experience and she wanted us to have it. I actually graduated high school with several of the kids that I started kindergarten with. It was quite the blessing to have a hometown experience like that. For Jesus, the hometown place is Nazareth. And as a United Methodist Church pastor who's itinerant, I know the hometown experience for my family and me will be a little bit different. Even though I've experienced hometown life growing up, I know that my kids will have a different experience than I will. But that's okay, because the hometown experience is more than just about a place. I wonder what your hometown experience has been like. What are some of the best things about a hometown? It's where we know everyone and everyone knows us, right? There's a closeness that exists. There's a history. The hometown is familiar. It is comfortable. It is predictable. There is consistency and routine. We know what to expect, right? There is stability and security. Not much changes. It's why we often say there's no place like home. Now, let me ask you this question. What are some of the troublesome things about a hometown? What are some of those troublesome things? Well, it's where we know everyone and everyone knows us. There's a closeness. We have a history. The hometown is familiar. It is comfortable. It is predictable. There is consistency and routine. We know what to expect. And there is stability and security, and not much changes. It's why we often say, you can never go home again. When I talk about the hometown, I'm talking about more than Nazareth. I'm talking about more than the southeast side of Indy. I'm talking about more than Noblesville or any other geographical location. Our hometown isn't something outside of us. It's something within us. It is not a place. It is our way of being. It is how we live our life. It is our routines, our habits. It is our attitudes and our beliefs. It is our opinions and prejudices and assumptions. It is our values. And it is our disciplines. It's the hardened patterns of how we've always done things and what we've always thought. The hometown is a lens through which we see the world, one another, and ourselves. The hometown shapes who we are and how we live our life out in the world. And regardless of how often we have physically moved, we all have a hometown, and usually more than one. What are your hometowns that shape your life today? What are your hometowns that shape your life today? Maybe it's your faith. Maybe it's the church. Maybe it's politics or national or cultural identity. Maybe it's your family, what they told or taught you, or the family way of doing things, your traditions. Maybe it's your work. Could be your reputation or your social status. Maybe it is an idealized memory, nostalgia for the way things used to be. Maybe it's an image or a persona that you project. The hometown is rarely just one thing, but is a very complex conglomerate of many things that make us who we are. See, most of us, I suspect, like to believe that we have the hometown advantage, right? You're much more likely to win a game when you're playing at home, right? We think that playing the game on our home field gives us the edge. We know the pitch. We know the turf of our own field. But what about the hometown disadvantage? Have you heard of the hometown disadvantage? Well, here's what I mean by that. In the hometown, it's easy to know about another, to know all of the things about them, to hear all of the gossip about them, but to not really know the person. The hometown is often, it has a way of convincing us that the hometown way is the right way, the best way, maybe even the only way. And sometimes our vision of the world and life extends only as far as the city limits, the town limits of our hometown. We value our closeness, but risk becoming closed off to others, to someone or something new. And excessive familiarity often keeps us from recognizing, from valuing and appreciating what is right in front of us. We become God in our hometown, and we fail to see God at work in others around us and even in ourselves. I remember coming to church the first Sunday in January of 2017. I had started the process into pastoral ministry. I had gone through background checks and psychological evaluations, and I had taken all of the license to preach courses, and I had become a local licensed pastor. The first of many steps in my pastoral ministry process. And I was blessed to have a mentor for a senior pastor at my home church who said, I want you to become an associate pastor here as a local licensed pastor. And I've already talked to the conference superintendent, and I've talked to our staff parish, and we're going to hire you. And I want you to come and be a pastor here. I was pumped. I now had the title pastor in front of my name, and I had been appointed in the home church as an associate pastor. And I know this wasn't meant to be a slight and was meant to express the wonderful ways in which I had grown. But one of the men from the church, who now I'm a pastor for, says, man, I remember when you were just that squirrely kid dating my buddy's daughter. You were the one we all had to keep an eye on. And look at you now. So they got a new associate pastor, and they may have well just said, it's just Jesse. He's been here for more than a decade now. The people of Nazareth could just as well have said, oh, that's just Jesus. They were astounded by the wisdom in his teaching, and they knew about the deeds of power that he had done, yet it made no difference. That's just Jesus. It's the hometown kid. That's the carpenter, the son of Mary. His brothers are right over here. His sisters are the one right here with us. They all knew about him, and they took offense at him. I think that's the hometown disadvantage. And it happens whenever we become stuck in the status quo and we defend our hometown against change and growth. See, the suburban sprawl is a big contender for many hometowns today. I saw it whenever I was growing up in my hometown. I saw it in Cicero whenever I was up there, and see it here in and around Noblesville as well. The way our social and cultural changes occur are a big contender, not just for our hometown as an exterior, but our interior hometown of life as well. We settle for what we know rather than opening our hearts and minds to what we don't know. See, that hometown disadvantage happens whenever we say, we've always done it that way. That's a mentality that will surely prevent growth and newness of life. The hometown disadvantage can happen when we take for granted and we refuse to see or listen to those we love most and are closest to. We think we know everything about everyone and what is best for them according to the hometown rules. It happens when we let familiarity blind us to something new, and it breeds contempt, and we make our world small. You see, we can control what is small. We can have a semblance, even if it is a false semblance of control, but it's there. We feel like we can control, and anything that threatens that, anything new, must be dealt with swiftly and with contempt. Absolutely not. We cannot allow that change to happen, because if it happens, then my control that I have here in my hand might get too heavy to carry, and I might not have control anymore. So we not only squash it, but we squash it with that hometown contempt. Another disadvantage is when we choose being content and comfortable over being challenged. We fail to grow because change isn't necessary for the hometown way of life. And another way is we believe that which is holiest and closest to God cannot coincide with that which is most familiar and closest to us. We know everything there is to know about our hometown, and God becomes distant because we become the God of our hometown. And we fail to see God moving in new and exciting ways within our hometown because, remember, not much changes in the hometown. And lastly, we miss the presence of God in our life. We miss the presence of God in the world and in our prayers because it didn't come with the pomp and circumstance that we think we deserve. There is this notion of decorum to hometown life. See, because we know everything about everyone, and everyone knows everything about everybody else, and everybody knows where everybody stands in the pecking order, and decorum is appropriate. I'm the mayor of hometown me, right? Recognize me. Hometown advantages can be amazing, but hometown disadvantages, they can be crippling. I wonder if the hometown disadvantages at work in your life, in my life today? And if so, in what ways? How are those hometown disadvantages holding us back? I wonder if it's preventing deeds of power from being done in our lives. I wonder if it's preventing you and me from going and doing deeds of power in God's name. I wonder how the hometown disadvantage might be diminishing our lives and impoverishing our world. And I wonder what you and I are willing to do about that. How are we willing to step outside of the city limits, to allow ourselves to be challenged, to allow ourselves to grow in newness of life? You see, Jesus showed the disciples exactly how to do that as he sent them out 2 by 2 into the world. He sent them out in his name. They were challenged. They were received by some. They were rejected by some. That is the way of the world, is it not? And when they were rejected, they didn't come home crying. They shook the dust off, and they went to the next town. They went on to the next challenge. So maybe we need to expand our city limits. Maybe we need to write a new town charter, or maybe we just need to shake off the dust, move on, and leave our hometown. Find new ways to grow. I wonder what might be waiting for us out there in this world. How are you going to shake off the dust and find new ways to grow? In what ways are you going to change the mindset that we've always done it that way? What do you know everything about? Who do you know everything about? What do you keep small so you have a semblance of control? What challenges and times of hard trials have you experienced that can become disciplines in your life that you can adopt to help overcome the difficulties and experiences of life? Is it a hometown advantage that you're seeking? Or is it a hometown disadvantage that you're seeking to overcome? Either way, it is the hometown of life that we hear in Jesus' preaching today. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, as we come to you and prepare to come to the table together, Lord, help us set aside our hometowns and put you at the center of our hearts. We can set all of the hometown advantages aside